Hi, Polly here.
And this is Tortuga.
And this is Trek for Free Stories. Let's dive in.
Today's adventure. Did giants build the mounds? Now enjoy the story, mystery, adventure, and history.
Fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be ye high or be ye low. Every child in the English-speaking world knows those words. Nobody questions them. They're just a rhyme, right? They've been a rhyme for so long, the question nobody thinks to ask is, well, where did they come from? You know, some of the rhymes like London Bridge is falling down, Rings around the rosy, Jack and Jill. Historians have spent generations tracing those nursery rhymes back to their origins. And guess what? What they found is that they were not invented. They were actually remembered. Real events, real disasters, and real history. They're compressed into something small enough for a child to carry and repeat across centuries. Because the people who experienced it needed that history to survive. So, here's the question that keeps me up at night. What else did we turn into a rhyme to remember? The Paiute didn't write their own history down. They sang it. They told it. And when archaeologists finally opened up that cave and listened to what Sarah Winnemucca had already said, the fire was actually there. The red hair, it was there too. The enemies were there. The oral record held. What if giants are there too? There's a snake in the ground in Ohio. It's 1,348 feet long, coiled across a ridge, its body aligned to the summer solstice sunrise. Nobody knows who built it, and nobody knows why. The people who lived there when the Europeans arrived said that they didn't build it, that they had actually inherited it. It was already ancient. And in the mounds buried near it, explorers in the 1800s, well, they found bones. Big bones. Bones that actually got documented, measured, reported, and then sent to Washington. And that's where the trail runs cold. Hey there, I'm Tortuga. This is Trek for Free, and this is the story of the Mounds.
Before we get to the bones, let's talk about what these people built, because it's the thing that makes everything else more complicated. In 1250 AD, the city of Cahokia sat on the east bank of the Mississippi River in what is now southern Illinois. It covered 5 square miles. It had a central plaza larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza. It was home to an estimated 20,000 people. In 1250 AD, London had 18,000. Let that land for a second. There was a city in the American interior, centuries before Columbus, before any European contact, that was larger than medieval London. Monk's Mound, Cahokia. Massive earthen pyramid, largest pre-Columbian structure north of Mexico. The main pyramid at Cahokia, Monk's Mound, is 100 feet tall and covers 14 acres at its base. It contains more earth than the Pyramid of the Sun at Wakan in Mexico. It was built by hand, basket by basket, carried and packed and shaped over generations. This is not a primitive culture. But Cahokia is just one piece of it. In Newark, Ohio, the Hopewell culture built an earthwork complex that covered 4 square miles. Not 4 miles of scattered mounds, 4 square miles of precise, connected geometric enclosures. A perfect circle, a perfect square, an octagon that encloses an area of 50 acres aligned to the 18-year lunar cycle, the point in the moon's orbit when it rises and sets at its most extreme positions. 18 years. These people were watching the sky long enough to track an 18-year cycle and then built a 50-acre structure to mark it permanently. Modern surveyors have measured these alignments. They are not approximate. They are accurate to within fractions of a degree. And then there is Serpent Mound, a ridge in Adams County, Ohio, 1,348 feet long, the body of a great snake coiled 7 times, its head aligned to the summer solstice sunset, its tail coiled in a spiral that points toward the winter solstice sunrise. The local Shawnee and Cherokee, when asked who built it, said they didn't know. It was there when their ancestors arrived. The people who built it were gone. The question that nobody has answered cleanly is who those people were, and how a culture without metal tools, without the wheel, without written mathematics, built structures aligned to astronomical cycles with the precision of a modern engineering team. Maybe they figured it out over generations. Maybe a sophisticated civilization accumulated the knowledge over centuries of careful observation. Or maybe the answer to who built them is right there in the mounds, buried with the builders. And the record of what was found is the part of this story that gets complicated.
Before the Smithsonian, before the universities, before anyone had a theory to protect, the newspapers printed what people found. In 1883, the New York Times reported a burial mound in Cartersville, Georgia, containing skeletal remains estimated at over 7 feet tall. In 1885, the Worthington Advance in Ohio reported giant skeletons excavated from a mound in Morrow County, skulls described as larger than any modern human. In 1891, the Illustrated London News covered the discovery of mound burials in Illinois with remains that measured, by the excavator's account, between 7 and 8 feet. These aren't fringe sources. These are contemporary newspapers printing what people dug up and what they measured. And it wasn't just newspapers. The Smithsonian Institution's own Bureau of American Ethnology, the government body specifically tasked with documenting indigenous cultural remains in the late 1800s, filed reports from mound excavations across Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, and Kentucky that noted skeletal remains outside the normal range for the populations being studied. Their own reports, their own documentation. And then those remains went to Washington.
Here is where most people in my position would say something like, I'm not going to bring religion into this. I'm going to bring religion into this. Genesis chapter 6, verse 4. There were giants in the earth in those days. Not metaphor, not poetry, a statement. In the oldest surviving written account of human prehistory, the people writing it down felt the need to note, specifically, explicitly, that there were giants in the earth in those days. Numbers 13, verse 33. The Israelite spies return from Canaan and report what they saw. We saw the Nephilim there, the descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. The word Nephilim appears in the oldest texts we have. It is translated as giants. It is not a word that Hebrew scholars dispute the translation of. It appears, it means what it means, and the writers of those texts chose to include it. The Paiute had the Site Ka. The English nursery rhymes had the giant at the top of the beanstalk. The Greeks had the Titans. The Norse had the Jotnar. The biblical record has the Nephilim. Every major ancient culture on Earth, on every continent, has some version of this story. At what point does that stop being coincidence and start being a pattern? I'm not telling you what to conclude. I'm telling you the pattern exists. Here is what we know happened. The Smithsonian's Bureau of American Ethnology sent teams to mound sites across the eastern United States throughout the late 1800s. They excavated, they documented, they measured. The remains they found were logged in field reports, assigned catalog numbers, and shipped to Washington. The Smithsonian currently acknowledges holding hundreds of thousands of Native American skeletal remains in its collections. The specific remains from mound sites, the ones with the anomalous measurements, the ones the newspapers reported on, The ones the field teams documented in their own records. Those are the ones without clean institutional trails. Not all of them. The majority of the record is intact and accessible. But the specific subset that would answer the size question, that's the subset that's harder to track. Is it institutional chaos across 150 years? Understaffed archives, inconsistent cataloging, the normal disorder of any organization that received that much material in that short a time? Maybe. Is it something more deliberate, a decision at some point that some evidence was more disruptive than useful? Nobody has said so on the record. What we have is the newspaper accounts, the field reports that mention the measurements, and the institutional record that doesn't fully account for what happened after those remains arrived in Washington. We covered this same pattern in the Lovelock Cave episode. The same Bureau of American Ethnology, the same time period, the same gap in the institutional record at the exact point where the most interesting physical evidence should be. One site could be coincidence. 2 sites is a pattern worth asking about.
The good news is that the places themselves are real and open and extraordinary. Serpent Mound, Adams County, Ohio, one of the most remarkable things you can stand next to in North America. Ohio History Connection manages the site. Small entry fee, walk the ridge, stand at the head of the snake at the summer solstice, and watch where the sun sets. The alignment is not approximate. Newark Earthworks, Newark, Ohio. The Great Circle is free to enter and managed by Ohio History Connection. The Octagon Earthworks, the ones aligned to the lunar cycle, are on a golf course for the majority of the year. Not a joke. The Newark Country Club has operated there since 1910. Ohio History Connection has a legal agreement allowing 4 public access days annually. Worth timing a trip around one. Cahokia Mounds State Historic Site, Collinsville, Illinois. Free entry. The interpretive center is excellent. Climb Monk's Mound. The view from the top is the kind of thing that resets your sense of what this continent was before contact. All of these sites are on the Trek for Free map. Filter for ancient sites.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Trek for Free Adventure Stories. If this sounds like your kind of expedition, give us a thumbs up, subscribe so you can catch the next one. In the spirit of adventurers of yesteryear and the storytelling legends of Louis L'Amour, I hope we find a place in your travels. See you on the road. Until next time, adios.